You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
Welcome to the Hot Options Report, your premier source for insight into the fast-moving options market. Each day, we'll track down the products that are dominating the options chains and impacting your trading account, from Nvidia to VIX and everything in between. If it's lighting up the options tape, then you'll find it on the Hot Options Report.
All right, everybody, that music means it is time to get down to business on the Hot Options Report for Tuesday, November 4th. Hope you're having a good start out there to your trading week. Been kind of wild, a little bit of red on the screens out there today. Most of the major indices giving back some of the juice they've had this year. S&P closing off nearly 1.2%. NASDAQ edging out over 2% to the downside, 2.04%. Dow off about 0.5%. VIX cash closing right around the 19 handle out there today. So interesting stuff afoot out there, listeners. Speaking of interesting stuff, hopefully you're checking out the free report that we are giving you, the free data to go along with this show. Because what better way to arm someone who's interested in options activity and unusual activity than to give them access to awesome, unparalleled free data? And thankfully, our friends over there at Quick Options are doing just that. In fact, they created a whole URL just for you folks, thehotoptionsreport.com. It's just the name of the show. You can't forget it. Head on over there. Get in there. Get early before the alpha runs out. Get the free access to all of this data. Trust me, you're going to want it. You can't beat the price. It's going to blow away anything you're getting on any of your brokerage platforms out there. And you know what? It runs throughout the day too. So some people say, oh, it's only for the end of the day. But no, it goes all day long. So if you want to see what's lighting up the tape at noon or 1 p.m. or whatever time floats your boat, the Hot Options Report has it all there for you. Thanks to Nick and the crew over there at Quick Options for putting all that together for you. They really did not have to do that. But you know what, listeners? That's how much we like you here on the old show. Let's see if the market likes some volume in VIX options today, shall we? And you know what? VIX cash kissing the 19 handle again for the first time. In fact, first time in a while. In fact, closing exactly a 19 handle, which is kind of wild. Up nearly 2 points today. Yeah, we're going to see a little bit of volume usually in that environment. And putting up a little over 1.25 million contracts in VIX land, that certainly blows away the ADV of about 923,000 contracts out there. So a hot day, a spicy day in VIX options. What was the hottest option on a hot day in VIX land today? If you said D's upside, you are the winner chicken dinner. 271,000 of the D's 25 calls, very Christmas appropriate. Average price for these about $1.77. So those are certainly looking a little bit better today than they were, let's say, yesterday. Interesting stuff out there as we keep on rolling out to SPY. Now, you see the VIX putting up rock'em sock'em robots type numbers, right? So you'd be forgiven for assuming that SPY and the SPX would follow suit. And weirdly enough, the answer, at least for SPY, was no. Only putting up about 9.25 million contracts out there today, which sounds like a lot, and it is, but the ADV is almost 9.6 million. So coming in a little bit light. So maybe this sell-off spooking some vol folks, but not exactly spooking the SPY traders out there. SPY closing today 675.24, so obviously well shy of that 6,800 and indeed that 6,900 level that we briefly kissed not that long ago out there, at least for right now. The hot option on a mostly active day out there in SPY land, a little over 500,000, 508,000 of the 675 puts. Average price for these, 71 cents. Now, obviously, we were bouncing off those lows intraday. So if you bought these, you had a lot of opportunities to get rid of them, even if maybe if you rode them to the close, maybe not the best. But interesting stuff. Let's go out to the S and see if the S also came in slightly below expectations. And the answer was yes, a little over 4.25 million contracts going up in the S against an ADV of 4.35. So within spitting distance of their ADV, but not exactly blowing the doors off like you might expect. The S closing again off nearly 1.2%. The S closing 67.71.55 out there today, listeners. So wild day out there in SPX land from a sell-off perspective. What was the hot option on a red day out there in the S today, listeners? It was 113,000 of some downside puts. And in fact, these went out pretty close to the money in the cash. 67.70 puts. Average price for these, nearly $5. So they were not giving these away, listeners. Again, we kicked off the day down quite a bit, tried to rally, came back down to it again. So you had multiple opportunities if you did buy these to try to get rid of them towards the end of the day, maybe a little bit more challenging if you rode them into the close. As we keep on rolling out to small caps. Small caps saying, hold my bear kids, off nearly 1.75% today, closing 241.20. So starting to make some of these downside November put strikes we've been talking about a little bit more relevant. Putting up nearly 2 million contracts today. So small caps have kind of been the stealth hit in terms of volume and action recently. They've been exceeding their already pretty inflated ADV of 1.75 million contracts, putting up nearly 2 million today, 1.93 million contracts. And what was the hot option on an absolutely rock'em sock'em day in small caps? 143,000 of the 230 puts. So again, going back out to November downside, these going up for an average price of $1.34. So we've seen 235s, 231s, all sorts of November downside puts have been lighting up the tape out there in small caps this week. And today is the 230 puts turn as we keep on rolling out to the Qs, listeners. Was it a hot day, a banger day in the Qs? The Qs off a little over 2%, closing today 619.25. And yeah, it was an explosive day. Over 5.75 million contracts against an ADV of a little bit shy of 5 million. So blowing the doors out there in the Qs. And the hot option on a very hot day, 278,000 of the 620 puts. Average price for these about 84 cents, listeners. So interesting stuff out there as we keep on rolling out to single names. You know, sometimes when it's very macro heavy, when it's a big broad-based sell-off, sometimes the single name equities are left by the wayside. Was that the case today? Unfortunately, the answer was yes. Even though we are in the middle of earnings season, you'd hope that would drum up a little bit of action, and it did. We'll get to the top of our list, you'll see. But only cost you 389,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That is pretty light. That is middle of dog days of summer in August type of light volume, or middle of December volume. That's pretty light. That gets us to our old pal Pfizer coming in after their earnings today. They ended up selling off about 1.5%, closing $24.30 today. Putting up, again, 389,000 contracts to take the number 10 spot on a very light day. The hot option out there, such as it was, 39,000 of the D's 22.5 put. These are kind of interesting. Average price for these, 21 cents. Looks like paper was selling these, and they were opening. So, bit of a line in the sand in Pfizer, this far and no farther. You like Pfizer for $22.5, listeners? Does that excite you? The 52-week low is a little bit shy of 21, so 22.5 plus the 21 cents. So, getting it a little bit below that level. Do you like that? Would you draw that line in the sand? Looks like somebody did today. Nearly 40,000 times. For the number 10 spot, number 9, our old pal Intel, coming back to earth a little bit today as well, closing pretty much exactly $37, off about $2.50 or a little over 6%, putting up 500,000 contracts, 501,000. So quite a leap between 10 and 9 today. The hot option on a decently active day in Intel, 52,000 of, once again, going out to D's. That's kind of wild. Usually it's all front week all the time, but I'll go out to D's. It's the D's 45s. Average price for these, $1.08. Looks like paper might have been bailing on these as well, listeners. They were going up on the bid quite a bit, and this is potentially closing paper. So it could be someone maybe deciding the bloom is off the rose for tech, or for just Intel in particular. Either way, it looks like somebody deciding maybe $1.08 is all I'm going to get out of these. Discretion is the better part of valor. As we keep on rolling to number 8, it's the monster. If you've been paying attention at all, you know Crypto coming under steady assault these days. The monster selling off yet again today. Another 17, almost 18 handles, nearly 7%, closing 246.99 today. So it's been a rough run for the monster. At this point, their 52-week low is 225.43. So for how much monster moves, that's not that far away potentially. So interesting stuff out here, listeners. Of course, there's also a lot of talk about these highly levered crypto and indeed Bitcoin treasury strategies. If we keep seeing red in crypto, will that trigger some sell-offs? Interesting stuff out there. The monster putting up 534,000 contracts. The hot option out there today, 22,000 of the Nov pars expiring this Friday. Wow. Now, again, there is OI on this strike. It looks like someone could be getting the heck out of Dodge. They got 20 cents for these, and they were probably pretty happy to do it, given the fact that 300 kind of looks like a distant memory. 300 by Friday certainly does. Maybe 300 by the end of the year, or next year, maybe that's a little bit of a different story. But 300 by Friday, that seems like a bit of a rough go. No earnings. They already had their earnings, so unfortunately, no obvious catalyst that's going to get you through there. Maybe they were hoping the earnings would get them there. Now they're deciding, once again, discretion, the better part of valor. Take your 20 cents you have left and hopefully live to fight another day. Bucking the trend out there, number 7, our old pal Apple, the fruit company, closing pretty much 270 exactly, up a little over $1 or about 0.5%. So again, on a day of tech wreckage, Apple bucking the trend. 580,000 contracts for the number 7 spot. The hot option out there today, 63,000 of the 270 calls expiring this Friday. We closed right there, listeners. The average price for these is about $2.50. So Apple obviously needs to keep running. They did get as high as 271.5, so that certainly made those 270s look a little bit better. Can Apple keep up this momentum, or is it going to get sucked down with the rest of the tech names? We shall see as we keep on rolling to number 6. It's Meta, listeners. Meta's been on a mostly downward trajectory ever since their earnings recently. 627.32 is where they closed today, off a little over $10, or about 1 2/3%. Putting up again 703,000 contracts out there today, listeners. And the hot option on a pretty hot day in Meta, 23,000 of these 650 calls. Average price for these, $4.40. These obviously look pretty far in the rearview mirror as well. These were opening though, so it could potentially be someone hoping for a little bit of recovery towards the end of the week, or they could be overriding these and they're not worried about having their stock called away at the 650 level, which looks pretty good right now compared to where it is. So interesting stuff. Can we get back to 6.5 by Friday? We shall find out, listeners. As we keep on rolling to number 5, the Amazonians. They had a good earnings announcement. They've been mostly rallying, except for today, giving back about 4 2/3 or nearly 2%. Closing 249.32 today, listeners, putting up nearly 750,000 contracts. And the hot option out there today, 34,000 of the doubles, the 255 calls expiring this Friday. Average price for these, $2.26. So we did get there ever so briefly. Looks like right before the open, they were up to about almost 257. So they were looking a lot better, obviously, early in the session before Amazon looks like it got sucked down with everything else, except for Apple. Number 4, AMD. They closed today 250, pretty much exactly, off nearly $10 or nearly 4%. So giving some back to the market gods today, putting up 853,000 contracts for the number 4 spot. Worth noting, they do have earnings popping off in the after hours here, listeners. The hot option out there today, 36,000 of the 240 puts. So going to the dark side. Interesting. Average price for these, nearly $4, $3.85. So looks like paper probably was buying these, and this was opening paper, in which case maybe somebody looking for a little bit of a continued retreat post-earnings. If that's the case right now in the after hours, looks like the sell-off has continued a little bit. They're selling off another $2.50 out there. So it looks like the number was better than expected, but margin not exactly great out there. So they could be leaning on them the way they've leaned on some other AI-related names. We'll get to those right now as you get to number 3, listeners. It's our old pal Palantir out there, listeners. Coming back to earth a little bit, putting up 1.64 million contracts, though. So people were definitely trading Palantir today, closing 190.60 70, off nearly 8%, or about $16.50 out there today. They came for Palantir. I saw a great headline yesterday. Good results from Palantir, but an absolutely uninvestable stock at these levels. And I can't say I disagree, just given the valuation levels. Even after this sell-off, it's still well over a 600 PE, 633. That may sound old school looking at an AI name through the lens of PE, but at a certain point, you have to make some money on this stuff. So kind of wild. Seems like maybe the street's starting to come to that realization as well. You can't just spend infinitely on AI. At some point, it has to start making some revenue for you out there. That's why they've been taking Meta to the woodshed, and it seems like that's why they are taking Palantir there as well. Or either way, let's see what the hot option was out there in Palantir today. Looks like somebody maybe still hoping for a little bit of upside action. It was 69,000 of the pars, the 200 calls expiring this Friday. Average price for these, $2.11. They got close, 195.70, exactly $5 north of where they closed today. That's about as close as they got. At this point, obviously, it looks like a great covered call. You would sell that all day long. So we'll keep an eye on these. Can Palantir get back to 200? Is this just a bit of a bloom coming off the rose a little bit? They're just going to shake this off and come back for another rally. We shall see as we keep on going. To number 2, it's Tesla. Yeah, they came for them today as well. Closing 444 and a quarter, off a little over $24, or a little over 5% today, putting up nearly 1.7 million contracts. The hot option out there, going to the dark side, going to puts. That's interesting. We don't see a ton of puts sliding up the tape in the top spot, at least for Tesla, but that was the case today. Almost 61,000 of the 450 puts expiring this Friday. Average price for these, $11.07. Obviously, these expired nearly $6 in the money, so they're looking decent on these. This was opening paper. They obviously need that downside to continue throughout the rest of the week to keep those puts looking good. As we get to the big dog out there today, Nvidia closing shy of the 200 handle. How dare they? Selling off a little over $8, or about 4%, closing 198.69, putting up a little over 2.5 million contracts. So kind of light on the overall volume front from Nvidia's perspective, at least. The hot option out there, almost 150,000 of the par puts, the 200 puts expiring this Friday. What would you pay for a 200 put in Nvidia expiring this Friday? $3.18 for the Nvidia par puts expiring this Friday. Can Nvidia keep selling off to make those puts pay off? Well, we shall find out. That's going to do it for your hot options report for today. Again, I want to thank our friends over there at Quick Options for making all of this data accessible for you folks. Check it out, thehotoptionsreport.com. It's literally the easiest thing to remember. It's just the name of the show. Check it out. You can't beat the price. See you back here tomorrow for our usual array of content until we're back again after the closing bell. Another episode of the Hot Options Report. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.